Show of hands, who likes change? I'll be honest, I like change more when it impacts other people, and I like it less when it impacts me. Let's face it, change isn't fun, it's risky. And yet, change is good. I think as a species, humanity enjoys the familiarity of routine. There's comfort in the mundane. There are 2 points from this past Sunday's sermon that I would like to revisit. The first is the humorous layman's definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get different results. The reality is I do the same things in the same way because it's safe. There's little risk. It provides predictable, safe outcome. It becomes comfortable. But comfort should never be the goal. Which brings me to my other point that I want to highlight from this past Sunday. God is more concerned with our compassion than with our comfort. God has never called anyone to a life of comfort. He calls us to a life of significance. Now, maybe not from the world's perspective, but certainly from a kingdom perspective. Think about the widow and her offering. A poor woman gave an insignificant amount of money from the worldly perspective. But Jesus commended her because it was all she had. She risked everything to be faithful to God. Because God's view of her was what was most important. So it was worth the risk. The reality is there are some risks that we embrace, but we have to see the value that makes the risk worth it. Moving from single life to married life, deciding to start a family, committing to making payments for 30 years to buy a home. All of these changes have risk involved, but there is so much benefit that outweighs the risk. Following Christ calls for massive change in our lives. It too is worth the risk. Too often, the 21st century U.S. version of Christianity, or should I say the U.S. perversion of Christianity, is simply believing in Jesus so that life will be better. That's not what Christ called us to. He called us to live radically different lives than everyone else. In the parable of the talents, all 3 of the servants were aware of their master's desires, but one of the servants didn't think obeying him was worth the risk. He wasn't willing to take the risk necessary to please his master. We are only willing to take risk for Christ when we have an accompanying faith in Christ. Faith that he is worth it. Faith that he is all that matters. Hearing those words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." The author of Hebrews said that without faith it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Be sure of this, Christ calls all of us to take faith-filled risks on a regular basis. If you don't feel like you're living life on the edge, like you're on a high wire, you're probably not following Christ very closely. What is it that God is asking you to do that involves taking a step of faith? What risk are you avoiding because you value the comfort of routine? What change do you need to make to live a life of kingdom significance?